Hi ladies! Welcome to Pathways to Fertility, a YouTube station dedicated to women who are on the journey to conceive a baby, especially for the women who are on the hardcore journey, long journey of trying to figure out egg quality and staying present to an incredibly mentally hard journey. I am Samantha Jacobs. I'm a licensed acupuncturist in Connecticut and New York. I have been treating infertility since 2003 when I graduated. So today we're going to be talking about how a follicle grows. And I'm going to cut this into segments because boy oh boy is it a lot to put into one video. So I'm going to cut it down. And today we're going to just focus on the first stage of how a follicle grows. Now, what exactly is a follicle? Many of my clients are very confused. What's a follicle versus an egg? Now, a follicle is the container in which the egg sits. And we can think of this container as like bubble wrap or a Tupperware container. It's providing containment, safety, an ability to nurture and take care of this egg to get it ready for ovulation. So when we're talking about egg quality later on in other videos, it's going to be really important to recognize that it's not only egg quality, it's follicular, follicle quality. We need to not only take care of the egg, but we need to take care of the container. What exactly is a follicle? Right, we're talking about a container, a mechanism to provide safety, a mechanism to allow the egg to be the best it can be. And that container is created from cells. There are two layers of cells in the follicle. There are theca cells and granulosa cells. These cells are easily stimulated by luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. These two layers of cells are crucial for allowing the egg to mature, to be safe and secure, and to also allow other key elements, other key structures to be matured and grown within inside the follicle to allow for a proper ovulation. We want to keep in mind as we're going through different stages of follicular development that the follicle is going to change its name. It's not changing what the follicle is. It's simply indicating that there are a certain amount of cells and structures contained within the follicle. So it's, as the name changes, it's telling us about the development of the follicle. Now, before we delve into how a follicle grows, we're going to start with the very basic follicle. And that's a primordial follicle. Now, a primordial follicle is what I would call a sleepy time follicle. It's asleep. There's no activity, there's nothing going on. It contains all the basic building blocks to grow an egg and a follicle. Moving into the follicular process, we have the very first step. And we have the next set of names under a group name called a preantrical follicle. A preantrical follicle indicates that there's no antricle in the follicle, so it tells us it's in the first and second stages of follicular development. And underneath the idea of a preantrical follicle, we have the primary follicle. Now, the primary follicle is awoken and it's starting its journey to grow. and become the egg in 300 days that might have the opportunity to ovulate. There are key things that are going on in a primary follicle. First of all, we have its ability to be responsive and grow under the influence of FSH and luteinizing hormone. Second of all, this follicle, a primary follicle, now has the capacity to create estrogen. So it's starting to interact with the brain and tell the brain how it's growing, what size it's at, where is it in this process. And third of all, we have FSH encouraging cellular growth around the egg. And this has got an interesting name. This extra layer of cells around the egg is called the zona pellucidea. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. It's an extra layer of cells that are laying down the foundation for key elements to allow this egg, if ovulated, to be successful. And one of these key elements, this is so interesting, this extra layer of cells is going to encourage the sperm to bind with the egg during fertilization. It's encouraging proper fertilization. What makes a primary follicle grow? There are two key hormones that are a player in follicular growth. That is follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, and luteinizing hormone, LH. They are the two key hormones being secreted by the brain to encourage the follicle to grow. Now, when we're looking at this follicular process, it might get a little overwhelming. So I'm trying to break it down into little bite-sized nuggets. The key to remember is that this process doesn't change much from beginning to end. So they're basic building blocks, and once you can understand them, you can see how they play out through the whole cycle. The first layer of interaction with the follicle is with luteinizing hormone. Now, luteinizing hormone wants to interact with theca cells. So stepping back, if we're thinking about the container, the follicle being the container that the egg is sitting in, theca cells are part of that container. And what goes on is that the theca cells, they're really receptive and take in luteinizing hormone. And when luteinizing hormone enters into the theca cells, I want us to think of like a mixing bowl. So we have the luteinizing hormone inside the bowl. We also have cholesterol already inside the theca cells. And the luteinizing hormone with the cholesterol, they mix together and they create a new substance called androgens. Androgens leave the theca cells and enter into the follicle. So now we're going to look at FSH. FSH is interacting with that, once again, that Tupperware container of the follicle, interacting with that other layer of cells that we talked about, granulosa cells. And FSH is taken in by granulosa cells. Well, granulosa cells also take in androgens. And once again, thinking about a mixing bowl, we now have FSH in the mixing bowl interacting with androgens. And the two of them are mixed together, creating a new substance. And that substance is estrogen. And once estrogen has been formed through FSH and androgens. Estrogen leaves the follicle, enters the bloodstream, and goes back to the brain. And it tells the brain how the follicle is growing. So the more estrogen a follicle pushes out of itself, that tells the brain it's bigger and larger. And as it moves to the end of the process, right, it tells the brain which one has the best capacity for potential ovulation. Luteinizing hormone, FSH, interacting with the cells inside the follicle and with the egg, allows the follicle to grow even more cells. It allows the follicle to nurture and take care of and grow the egg. The balance between luteinizing hormone, cholesterol, androgens, FSH, estrogen, they're all interweaving with each other, and they're encouraging the best that this follicle can be. And it's these key interactions are encouraging the brain to interact in this process as well. It's allowing the brain to understand which follicles are having the best response, which ones are growing at the right speed. It allows the body to have this beautiful chemical messaging system to have the crossover and the interaction to allow this process to unfold over 300 days. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the secondary follicle, and we're going to be talking about how the structures inside the follicle change, and we're going to see how key elements are inside of that particular growth process for the follicle to become the one for ovulation. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, share with other women. Please leave a comment if you have any ideas for future videos. Please, anything and everything. I respond to people. If you're interested, please post. I will be back for another video, and thank you for listening.